So let's get into it. Why is it that a sprinter's lifespan ends faster than a distance runner's? Now, this isn't a sexy topic, but it's very, very interesting. And I got some different ideas why. I don't have any science behind it, but there is actual science behind it. It's just that I don't know it. So I did look this up before I actually spoke about it. But sprinters die faster than distance runners. And they're saying that too much running can, harm you. Now, this has nothing to do with what's going on with, CV right now and all of the athletes that are passing away because of, medicines that they took in order to keep playing in their profession. It's not what this is happening, or what this is about, but that is happening. There's a lot of people who are passing away at a very young age who are athletes in tip-top shape, peak of their, height of their athletic ability, 24, 25, they're gone. So that's another topic, but this is talking about just some theories that I, spent time thinking about. But why is it that sprinters die faster than distance runners? So here's my theory behind it. The cell itself, a single cell. Okay, so a cell is made up of different things inside of the cell, and it's powered by the mitochondria. Now, the heart powers us, right? You got a bad ticker, you're not going to do too much. But it needs power. Now, here's what I think. I think the more power that is required for something, the faster that it expires. The more use, of course, this is logical. The more you use your car, the faster your car is going to need more maintenance. I don't care what kind of car it is, but the more you use it, the quicker it's going to expire. Now, here's why I think it's happening. And this is far out, but that's what this channel does, reaches. Time itself. Okay, let's go back a little bit. Friction. Okay, so when something moves from one place to another, in the normal world, here to there is something that's resisting it. There's either gravity or there's some type of resistance that's slowing something down and saying, hey, you need to use a certain amount of power to make something go from here to here. You can't do it without power. You just can't do it, right? It's not going to move on its own. This bottle of water can sit here all day because there's nothing making it move, right? But as soon as something makes it move, you get the point. Now, what's surrounding this bottle of water is the interesting part. It's the gravitational pull. It's the force that's around the water that says there has to be a certain amount of power applied to it in order to get it from here to here, correct? Well, within that force, in gravity, there's friction. When you move something from one area to another, there's still friction around it. It could be very little or a whole lot. If something moves too fast, then you'll see more friction, and that friction will heat that item up because it's constantly trying to move from one place to another, but it's trying to do it at a high speed. I believe this applies to anything and everything, including the cells. And when you're moving through time, you have to apply so much force just to get past what is actually in time, what's actually in the centrifugal force and all that other stuff to try to break through those forces, those walls, which you don't really break through them. But yeah, that's what I'm talking about. So with all the things that are holding you back from moving from one place to another, these elements, if they were not there, if friction wasn't there, if centrifugal force wasn't there, then I think you would live longer. Now, somebody might say, well, let's look at space. Can an astronaut stay in space, and live a longer life in space because there's no centrifugal force? Can an astronaut live in space longer than they can live on a planet? I would say if an astronaut was born in space and their body was acclimated to space, an astronaut would live longer in space than a human would live longer in space than they would on a planet Earth. Because even though, the body is, blood and all that, movement and all that, there's still, something there that says, hey, I need power to go from here. You don't need as much power. And because you don't need as much power to move in space, the body can live longer if the person was born in space. So, if a person is not born in space, then their body is acclimated to gravity. And if you're acclimated to gravity and centrifugal force, and you need so much power to walk and things along those lines, then the answer is you'll die faster than somebody who lives in space. Now, it's just a theory. It's just what I think. We don't have any astronauts that are born in space or any space people, but we do have a whole theory about beings that are in space. Now, if you take that same concept and go, you know what? Maybe you're right. There are places where we are weightless, like in water, but there's still friction in water. You can't just zoom around in water without some type of resistance, even though it's a different kind of resistance. So it makes you think, can I live? For one, you can't move through water like you can move through just regular air. Water is more dense. So if somebody creates a weightless environment, which we do have weightless environments, if somebody creates a weightless environment and people actually are born into that weightless environment, I think those people would live longer than the average human. It's just my thoughts. You guys can tell me what you think. But in that reality, when you see people who live a long life, you look at, you're looking at them when they were younger, and you're like, what did you do when you were young? Did you do a lot of running? Were you heavy in the sports? Were you like a Jack LaLanne type a person? And I think that you're going to find out that the people who live to 100, 102, 110, 120 years old, even when those people were young, they were not super athletes. They were just regular people. They played sports maybe a time or two when they were young. And when they got out of high school, it was pretty much over for them. And they had regular lives. They went, got married, and, boom. That's the way they lived. They weren't super athletes that everybody cheered for, in the college and then after college and made a career out of it. With this being said, look, Jesse Owens died at like 66 years old. That's still a decent life, but that's younger than the average lifespan of a male. The average lifespan of a male in this country is 70 years old. That's the average lifespan. So when you're looking at somebody who dies before 70, you're like, this person died young. And some people go, no, 50 is old. Well, 50 is not old. Not even by any standards, 50 is not old, because you still have people who are 50 years old who can compete with people who are 30 and 20. And everybody knows this. Mike Tyson is 54 years old or something like that. Mike Tyson will go in there and knock somebody out who's younger than him. Probably not on his level though. But he could probably get in there with a couple guys and still compete with them. I don't know if he would win. All right? But can he compete? Can he still throw down? Yeah, so you can't say, 50, year old. Mike Tyson can walk into any normal place and probably beat up the above average man. All right? You still got people who are sprinters, who are in their 50s, and they are super fast. We just had one guy who's 70 years old who ran 113 seconds. Okay? Drink that in. 13 seconds. I saw two guys 80 years old run 100 in a blazing time. Two old white guys. I was there watching them, and we were all like, good grief, these guys are 82 years old, and they've been racing each other since they were in high school. That's their thing. But nonetheless, the people who take it as a profession, they are known to die faster than people who are distance runners. And I believe, it's because it's the power required to move through friction. I believe that friction is the main cause of that. The resistance that the Earth has, the gravitational pull that the Earth has, it's what takes them out of here early. It's what ages them. It's what makes them super tired to where their heart says, I can't do it anymore. If you look at most sprinters and you look at just their lifespan within the sport, it's over in 5-6 years. And some sprinters don't even make it that far. 5-6 years of professional sprinters are done. They can no longer hang with the sprinters who are coming out. And now it's probably even shorter than that. I mean, you have people who are anomalies like Usain Bolt from 2009. He won his first Olympics, and he ran all the way up to, 2019 or something, 10 years. You have people like Shelly-Ann Fraser-Price, who has a baby, and she's 34 years old. She has her sprinter lifespan is just immaculate. You know what I mean? Then you have Allison Felix, who was running when she was 18. Right now, she's 36. She just ran her last race this year. That usually doesn't happen. That's not the normal. If you look at Carmelita Jeter, it was over quick. Injuries, she's out of there. It was over quick. So you look at most sprinters, it just doesn't last that long. But you have some people who are, outside of that, they're outliers. But the majority of them, their sprinting life is over quickly. When you're looking at distance runners, it's not true. You have milers and stuff like that. They can go on a lot longer in their career and still be competitive. We're talking about at a competitive level, not just living. We're talking about at a competitive level. You have some milers who can still get out there and do it well into their 40s. Well into their 40s. Not unless something happens to them, like there's some type of, something going on where they got sick, something's hereditary, like El Garouge. If El Garouge was still healthy, he could still beat the majority of people on the planet. Point blank. El Garouge came down with some kind of sickness, and that was it for him. He not only whooped everybody's behind, but he still has the record today in the mile. And if you ever seen the video of him running the mile, I mean, it was just fantastic. And he created such a wind current when he was running, that the guy behind him broke the record too. He got right on his, that's what we do as milers. We know how to draft you. But he drafted a guy right into a world record just like he did. But of course, he holds the world record. Now, if you don't believe in drafting, then you never ran this. I used to be a distance runner, and that's how you relax. It's also when you're driving the same thing. If you want to save gas, get behind the truck. You're saving gas because your car's not working as hard. It's the same thing when you're running distance. If you look at a thing Mo is number one in the world in the 800. She has a competitor who just now pushed her to her limit, named Keely Hodgkinson. Her and Mo are the same age. They're both 20 years old right now. The last race they ran together, Hodgkinson comes up on her inside and surprises Mo. Mo didn't even know she was there, and when she felt her, she, had to give it her all just to beat her. They ran a 155, a 155 point whatever, but Mo ends up winning the race. And then Hodgkinson's next race, you see her in the next race, she loses. She runs a 157, but the reason why she lost is because one of the people who was running up against her went out and sprinted for the first 200 yards. And she ran it in 29 seconds. That's a no-no when it comes to the 800. She waited for everybody to catch up to her until she was dead last. She caught her breath, hung on to the last runner, waited until about 300 yards left in the race, and came up and started passing everybody. Hodgkinson hit her top stride. She had no more gears left. This girl had enough. She had all her gears left. So she waited till Hodgkinson hit her top gear, top stride, meaning she has no more transitions in her, and she just ran up behind her and then passed her and beat her. I've never seen anything like that in my life. But it just shows the power of running and the technique of running. Now, I didn't even get off into a tangent, but when it comes to the resistance of the planet, everybody has to go through the same resistance. And that resistance, it can't really be manipulated if you're just a regular person without science. But what I'm saying is, your skin cells, your blood cells, or whatever cells are in your body, they have to have so much power to power your body, to power you through life. That's it. If they did not require so much power, and you were actually able to slow down, just like a distance runner's heart rate is slower than a sprinter's heart rate. At one time, my heart rate was so low that a doctor, asked me if I was okay once she, took my heart rate. And I was like, yeah. She's like, well, your heart rate is really low. I said, because I'm a middle distance runner. So I didn't need to have as much energy as everybody else in order just to get up and walk around and stuff like that. I used very little energy to do it. You know what I mean? Because I was so used to going a longer distance at a speed that was faster than most people, but it was relaxing to me. I used to run a mile at 4:26. So when you constantly can do that, walking is a breeze. You know what I mean? I can't do that now. But when you see people struggling to walk and things along that line, their heart is beating faster. They need more energy to do this. What I'm saying that the pull of gravity is slowing people down. And there's a way to get around this you can't do it without science. I mean, you can eat more, you can lift more, you can do more resistance training. But I think, just the theory, I think there is a highly probable and possible design that a scientist and some type of quantum physics scientists can come up with to slow down the resistance that an individual faces on a daily basis. Not necessarily making you weightless, because it's not what you want, because your bones have become brittle. But what it will do, if you surround this person in this type of, not necessarily a force field, but this, I don't know, some kind of field, I don't know, whatever you want to call it, it will slow down the friction in front of you, behind you, all around you, and it will enable you to move a lot easier. It also enable you to breathe easier. And it's just an idea. It's, like I said, this is just a theory. But what we do know, in fact, is that sprinters die faster than distance runners. And that's the reason why. Some people say because your heart's beating more. Yeah, all of that. Why is your heart beating more? Why do you need more? It's friction. And I've been talking about this for years. Nobody really wants to talk about it, but because it's corny, it's not sexy. But this is my way of just getting things off my mind. But I also applied the same theory to all of the crashes of the space crashes. There are 3 of them. One of them, it was stationary. The 2 astronauts were in a stationary vehicle, and it just caught fire and they burned up. The other one was when it was in 85 or 86 is when they were leaving the planet, and a canister exploded and the whole ship exploded. And the other one was where the spaceship was coming in to the planet, and all of a sudden, it hit atmosphere. They had contact. They were talking with NASA, and then there was no more talking. It broke up, and it split up. And my theory behind the whole thing is, well, once I looked into that particular one where they were coming back and why it blew up, it was because they used cheap materials, because the NASA program was already going out. So what they did was they said, well, the NASA program is too expensive. So under the underbelly of one of these spaceships, you need to have heat shields that can withstand so much heat because of friction. What's in between those heat shields is foam. It's a type of heating foam. Well, what they did was they used a cheaper type, and there was a crack once it hit, so much speed. It heated that foam up. It left a crack, and it boom, the whole thing would bang very quickly. So it was whoever was in charge at that point. It was their fault. Actually, both times. But when I looked at that, I said we wouldn't need a heating shield if we didn't have to move so fast. And or if you want to move that fast, you need to have something that surrounds the spaceship that slows down friction. If you can slow friction down, where friction is there, but it's not as prominent, then you can move pretty much as fast as you can up until a certain point. So whatever the number that friction is at, there's always a number. Whatever the amount or pounds or whatever it is, however they measure it, of friction that is created when an object that is so big is moving so fast. There's a mathematical equation there somewhere. When an object is, so big, it's moving so fast, it creates this much force, and this much friction is applied to that force, and the result is usually fire. Well, if you can take that force that's being applied and nullify the friction that it's going up against, then it will allow you to move faster, or it would allow you to move at the same speed safer. Meaning you wouldn't have any explosions, you wouldn't have any dead teachers who won a space lottery and then went up and got blown up. You wouldn't have any of that. You would still have, spaceships or rocket ships, whatever we're using now, and they would be able to move at the same speed but a lot safer. Not only that, if you minimize that and I don't know, made it, as much as a wristband or a watch or something like that that people can wear, then they could come outside and the same thing would apply. They could walk around or they can, whatever, live, breathe, and it wouldn't cost them as much energy to do so. And on a medical, looking at it medically, you have a lot of people who are anywhere from polio to AIDS victims who struggle just with breathing or moving, spinal stenosis. They're in pain when they move. This would alleviate a lot of their pain because they don't have to use as much force to get up and or to move in any shape, form, or fashion. They can get up with ease. See, we keep thinking if we apply robotics to some of these problems, then it'll fix it. That's not going to fix it. And it doesn't fix the problem. They still have to use, still a certain amount of force has to be applied. But if you can nullify the force, the friction, in some kind of way, just even a little bit, 10, 20%, and you can adjust how much you want to nullify it, then you would have people whose body would be able to recover from whatever it is that they have faster because they're not using all of that energy to try to heal themselves. And this gets down to red blood cells and white blood cells too, and their use and so on and so forth. Like I said, I'm not a scientist, but I like to talk about theories like this because either I think it's been done before or I think it can be done. I just don't have the knowledge to do it. And I'm not afraid to admit that. I'm not a scientific genius. I am a person who theorizes about what is possible and how can these possibilities be applied. Boy, Tone to it too. I'm out. Thanks for listening.